Hey everybody, Dr. Nick here. Just finished recording another great episode of The Hospitality Spirit with John Wells. John's the general manager of the Hilton Chicago, located at 720 South Michigan Avenue here in Chicago. It's an iconic hotel. During our conversation, we covered a wide variety of topics, including the history of the hotel, some of the things that he focuses on a weekly basis, including customers, as well as sustainability, technology trends. John was a great guest, and I hope you enjoyed the episode. Good afternoon, everybody. Dr. Nicholas Thomas here, recording live at the Corner Estate in Jackson. Man, am I excited. I am joined with one of the biggest supporters of the DePaul School of Hospitality Leadership, John Wells. John Wells is the general manager of the Hilton Chicago. You might know the Hilton Chicago. It's one of the largest in Chicago, 720 South Michigan. It's an iconic location right across the street from Grant Park. John has spoken in numerous classes here in the School of Hospitality Leadership. He's also been a highly supportive member of our Hospitality Advisory Council, and nothing brings me more joy for the first podcast of 2020 to have John Wells here in the flesh on the Hospitality Spirit. John, how are you today?
Great. Thank you very much for having me today.
We're so awesome. It's great that you're here. So there's so much that we can talk about today. We can talk about the property itself. We can talk about you. We can talk about Hilton and some of their great initiatives towards sustainability. Hilton always holds a special place in my heart because it was the very first hotel I ever worked in. So I was in high school, and I tell my students this, and it's the honest to God truth. I needed some spending money, and I opened up the paper, and a small little 250-room Hilton right outside the BWI airport in Baltimore needed someone to drive the shuttle. So I drove the shuttle back and forth between the airport and the hotel, and then I finally got promoted to bellman, which was also a valet because it was only a 250-room hotel. So most of the time I would just help people with their bags and park their cars. And then I finally transitioned to the front desk, and then this was around my junior year of high school, and I realized, I think I might want to do this for my career. Mm-hmm. So I ended up going to hotel school, and the rest is history. But Hilton is where I began. So I am super excited that we've got a huge Hilton superstar here with us today. So maybe why don't we start with just a real quick introduction?
Sure.
About what your current role is with the Hilton Chicago.
Mm-hmm. Well, first, I have to comment on your story because so much of what you experienced still lives and breathes today. People get their foot in the door, and their careers just continue to blossom and opportunities present themselves. And we always, always, always hire from within first. And that's critical because it's such an investment in people.
Well, it's interesting because you didn't know what to expect on your first day. And it doesn't take very long for you to realize that it's all these interconnected departments with all very different functions. And the job you go into doing might not be the one that you're in for very long. It might be something completely different. So I started driving a shuttle van and then ended up going to HR, and now I'm a teacher. So who knows what happens.
Right. And similar to myself, in 1985 when I got into this business, and I started in a full-service hotel as a room service server, right? And what's interesting was I never had ever stayed in a full-service hotel before I even started working there.
Really?
Because even growing up, you stay at a Best Western or a Motel 6 or, we just didn't have that financial support, growing up to ever experience a full-service hotel. So when I first, I actually was coming down to the hotel, a friend of mine told me, hey, they have a valet parking job available. Why don't you try that? Because the summer before that, I was a forklift driver. Mm-hmm. And I walked in, the position was filled already because back then, it was the newspaper you looked at. There was no online ability to see what positions were open. And I went in and they said, no, unfortunately, we just hired for the position, but we have a room service position open. Can you carry a tray? And I'm thinking to myself, I've never been in a full service hotel and I've never carried a tray. But
were you kind of thinking like a small tray like that? I mean, I'm envisioning the big one on the shoulder, like the big banquet.
Along those lines. And I said, no, I have never carried a tray, but I said I'm willing to learn. And that was the opening I then was in room service, and then I was given opportunities and to advance as assistant manager after that, and worked in the restaurant and beverage. It was always one of those things where opportunities kept presenting themselves. And I still feel like that today since 1985 to now, 34 years later, opportunities keep presenting themselves.
So it's interesting because a lot of the people that I worked with and I came across in the hospitality industry, specifically the lodging segment, who are in senior leadership positions in hotels really kind of came up one of two tracks. They came up the F&B track, and that put them into their senior leadership role, or they kind of came up the rooms side of it. So you kind of took that F&B side.
I took
Was
the
that by
F&B side.
choice? I mean, did you kind of stick with F&B and not jump over to rooms quite yet? Or
I think it was all luck. I started, never worked in a restaurant before that, and then gained experience along the way. And I was still in college at the time when I took this part-time room service job in the summer, which led to me working through the fall and then getting promoted to the restaurant. But then I started to take interest in classes of enology, learning anything and everything about wine. And all of a sudden, things started to happen, and crazy things like getting promoted started to present themselves. And that was my first hotel, and I'm in my 11th hotel now.
Wow, 11. So now you're the general manager of the big Hilton Chicago. I mean, when you look at, I love looking at old historic pictures of Chicago, and inevitably on Michigan Avenue is the very distinct looking three towers of the Hilton Chicago. Tell us a little bit about the Hilton Chicago for those that aren't familiar with it.
Right. I think it was one of those where, through everyone's career, as you move through, you look at certain hotels like the Waldorf Astoria or the Palmer House or the Hilton Chicago, the rich history, and you kind of aspire, like, I'd like to really try that. And when I was with Hilton, I looked at a few of those hotels as iconic hotels and all the things that happen in those. So I felt really good about the opportunity to come to Chicago and work in that hotel. And that was actually, believe it or not, 13 years ago.
Oh, my goodness. So the hotel itself, over 1,000 rooms, incredibly impressive meeting and event space, multiple food and beverage outlets. You really cater to both the leisure and the business traveler. It is the stereotypical full-service big urban hotel.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And in your capacity as general manager, you really kind of oversee that whole function.
Exactly. And there's a lot of differentiators about working at the Hilton Chicago. First of all, we have the history, right? We have all those things that you just mentioned with having 235,000 square feet of meeting space. We've got specialty suites that are like residential units. We have one of the largest fitness centers, and sustainability is a priority for the building. But the real drivers as a general manager for me are just four key areas that I think summarize what make any business successful. It's your team members, your customers, your owners, and what you do from a social responsibility perspective. Mm-hmm. In any business, if you can do well in those four, you're going to be successful.
Everything else falls into place.
Exactly. So as general manager, you always have to balance those four. What are you doing with your team members? We have a survey every year. We have roundtables throughout the year. And our goal is to continue to improve in any of the feedback that we receive. Mm-hmm. Our customer perspective, what are our customers saying about us from TripAdvisor to what we call our SALT scores, which is the satisfaction, the surveys that are completed and given back to us. What are we doing and improving there? From our owners, well, that's basically anything financial, mm-hmm. right? And that's critically important to have that strong relationship with our ownership. And then the social responsibility piece, that piece alone, giving back to the community. What are we doing from social responsibility in our neighborhood and in our communities? And if you could do well in those four.
So from the customer side, this is always one of the things that I've really admired about you. When I've kind of, you and I have known each other for almost a decade since I've been here at DePaul, and I see a lot of what you do is that customer relationship building piece. So whether it's a really loyal customer, you're going out and playing golf with them, or you're going to a Bears game with them,
right?
And that's. I don't necessarily see other GMs really going to that extent with their customer. And they might be doing it, but that seems like it's a really important part of what you do. I mean, you're almost an ambassador.
Oh, yeah. Yes, and I think it's something that I've done always through my career, but I think it's starting to catch on, which is I'm like, I got to be watching this. My competitors are doing more and more.
We just gave away the seat.
Exactly, but I've been doing that my whole career. I've been a GM for 20 years in 4 different hotels, and I found that is the secret sauce, is the relationship building, and it has to do with my trips to Washington, D.C., where I meet with these big association clients. And those are the big citywides that come into a city. They have self-contained group business that, with my hotel, it works perfectly. And it's not just that one piece of business that I figured out. It's, they have board meetings. They have retreats. They have a family reunion with one of the board members that's coming. It is a trickle effect. Once you build the relationship, other things happen.
It almost, it's kind of cliche, but it almost kind of sounds like a sports age, like a Jerry Maguire-esque mentality.
Yeah, show me the money.
Of the way, yeah. I mean, the whole premise of Jerry Maguire is that he wanted the movie Jerry Maguire. If people haven't seen it, the premise is that he just didn't want to be a stereotypical sports agent. He wanted to have a smaller client base, but be able to have better relationships with them. So. And he knew that in the long run, if we want to get into technical kind of scientific terms, he knew that the service profit chain, building strong, loyal customers and great relationships with customers would end up leading to better results in the end.
Correct.
And you've really embraced that idea. Is that something that is Hilton specific, or that's something that's John Wells at Hilton Chicago specific?
I think it's a little bit of both to be successful in my role. And it's something that I've been doing, and I've been learning from it along the way. And it goes in the line of, if you're going to do something, do it well. Mm-hmm. That's your differentiator. That's what makes you unique.
Doing well by Wells. I feel like I just came up with the title of your memoir. So does that seems incredibly time consuming. I mean, does that mean that if we were to look at a weekly basis, kind of, I know it's tough to say that what a typical day or week in hospitality is like, but if you're traveling to those board meetings and those association meetings, are you getting down into the minutia of what's the RevPAR and ADR today? Are you looking at those STR reports or is that something that at your level with this size of hotel, you're now delegating down to your rooms division managers and your other department heads?
Well, along the same lines with sales, like how my day-to-day kind of interacts with our customers, to those details of, all the RevPAR index and things. Like, I still, in my calendar, I'll put a customer's birthday or their anniversary that has, over the years, I've learned, and I'll send them a note. I'll make a phone call. I'll do whatever I need to do. And it's part of that relationship building. Now, you would say, how does a GM of a 1,544 room hotel have the time to do this? You have to do this. And it's almost taking the mentality, when I first worked in my first hotel at 250 rooms, your day-to-day is a little different. You are in operations. But you learn those little things about your clients along the way. And I'm just doing it in a 1,544 room hotel. Now, all those specifics, like those reports, those competitive reports that you're talking about, I have some of the best team around me, from the director of revenue management, director of sales and marketing. These individuals are, especially at a hotel 1544, these are the people that are the best of the best. They've come up through the ranks like myself. They've seen it all. They challenge themselves. So they're self-starters, and they are the ones that really will feed me the information. I, of course, I've been in the industry long enough. I can look at a report and know right where to look, know where my owners are going to look, where my boss is going to look, and I'll be able to articulate and communicate what I need to do. But in terms of drilling down and challenging ourselves, I'm still part of those meetings. We have our weekly revenue meetings. We have, business review meetings for sales, and we still have those meetings. But I'm just fortunate to be surrounded by people that have been in the industry as long as they have, and they've worked their way up, and it's exciting to be around them.
Do you still? It's kind of a question. I mean, do you still go down to the lobby on a busy Friday afternoon just to? I mean, because for me, it's probably the thing that being in my role now that I kind of miss, just that natural energy that comes about on a busy turn, and going down to the Normandy Ballroom and just seeing a really big event going on. I mean, do you find yourself still walking the property?
Oh yeah. It's the best part about my job is not only interacting with the customers through the lobby or stopping by a big reception before a big event, and is walking around and talking to team members. I mean, some of the best ideas come from our team members, and some of the feedback that we get directly from our customers is critical to our growth and finding that next. What is it that we're going to do that is a differentiator, or provide better service, or hey, here's another revenue opportunity. So my role has to be mobile. I have to be able to do that every day.
So one of the things that I've always found really interesting about your hotel is its location. I mean, it's right at 720 South Michigan. It's right across from Grant Park. I mean, there's so many iconic events that, there's a reason when Daniel Burnham designed Chicago the way he did, to have this kind of grass area, that grass park, which is Grant Park, Millennium Park, that separates the water from the urban sprawl. But that park that's across the street from you has held, every year you've got Lollapalooza that goes on there. I remember after the Obama nomination in 2008, he had his huge speech there in Grant Park. What is it like almost being the hotel that's right there in the center of it all? I mean, what sort of challenges does that present logistically?
I think out of all the hotels I've ever worked, this hotel is really special for that main reason. Grant Park being at our front door presents great opportunities. Sure, we're right on the doorsteps of Lollapalooza for the 4 days. The marathon, where we're international stage.
That's true.
Where, we see so many of the elite runners. Any events that are happening in Soldier Field, it's all of a sudden, we know almost the minute when, for example, the Justin Bieber concert is happening this year, right? Because our reservations go through the roof, right?
There was a Korean K-pop band that came in for a couple days. BTS. And I mean, Jamie, I had never heard of them, and all of a sudden, the South Loop is packed. And the concert's going on all night, even though it was raining one of the nights. I mean, you were right there in the epicenter of it all.
Correct. It's almost where we'll see reservations spike on a day, and all of a sudden, within 24 hours, we're like, what just got announced in either Grant Park, Soldier Field, Northerly Island, anywhere in the South Loop area. And it's great that we are our location for those type of events, and to be part of that, and all the special events that really make Chicago a special place.
And for some, the size of your meeting space also is somewhat unique, because you have so much of it, and you can have associations and big events come in there and have everything completely self-contained. So this is what I think is always interesting about full-service hotels, that I'll have a student come to me and say, I really want to go into the restaurant industry and F&B, or I really want to go into meeting and events and do weddings, and I say, have you thought about the hotel industry? And they say, well, no, I want to go into restaurants, or I want to plan weddings. I'm like, look at a place like the Hilton Chicago, that everything is completely self-contained there. I mean, some of the events that you guys have had there are tremendous, and that's a huge part of it. So even if somebody maybe doesn't want to go the traditional, I'm going to work at the front desk, then I'm going to just jump over to housekeeping, maybe room res, and kind of work up the rooms division, they could have a great multi-decade career doing nothing but focusing on meeting and events.
Correct.
With a hotel like yours and a company like yours.
Oh, we do hundreds of programs, hundreds. And our social catering is just off the charts. We're one of the highest, in the company in terms of our social catering, with our ethnic weddings and the big galas that still happen. With our hotel ballroom, grand ballroom that you've been in, they don't build them like that anymore. And they're so special. People will come to our hotel, and it's very funny, because a lot of the annual events the ballroom only can fit 1,200. We have a bigger ballroom that can fit up to almost 2,000. They would rather keep their events small so they stay in the grand ballroom. They'll just charge more, which it says a lot about that space and the history. We just had a call today of a company that wants to come for their 50th anniversary next year because the father, who was with the company, had their 25th anniversary there. They want to have their 50th. We've had businesses that want to have their 100th anniversary in that event, in that venue, because of the beauty of that grand ballroom, where they feel comfortable wearing a black tie. You don't have to pay for any of the decor. You've got it in that space.
Yeah. Jamie, this ballroom is so cool. You almost don't have to spend any money on decorations because everything is so ornately done. But it's interesting because if I remember from one of the tours when I took my students down there, was it World War II where it was actually used as a military? It was converted into a dining room for the army.
Correct.
But it's like one of these, to your point, of these iconic hotels that have, history has changed so much over the decades, but the rock there, a rock of stability, has always been this building.
Right.
And all the things that have happened around the world during that time, you can always come back to that one hotel, and it's so iconic.
And it was originally built to be special for Chicago. It was originally the Stevens Hotel in 1927. And unfortunately, we just had the passing of Justice Stevens. His family was the one who built that hotel. He was a 6-year-old boy when his father and grandfather built that hotel. And they built it as the world's largest hotel. It was 3,000 rooms back then. Wow.
And I think you can still see if you stand in the corner of Balboa and Michigan and you look up, you can still see the S.
There's S's that are still above our brass doors that are the original doors from 1927. And a beautiful hotel, 3,000 rooms, the world's largest. Our first registered guest at the time was Charles Dawes, who was the vice president of the United States at the time. Rich history.
U.S. history. I don't know my U.S. history, Jamie.
But in the 40s, the hotel, of course, sold to the War Department, and it was converted into a military training facility and had 10,000 new recruits coming through every 6 to 8 weeks. Played a big part in World War II. And then in 1945, after the war, big man on campus, Conrad Hilton, was on the scene wanting to buy a hotel in Chicago.
And Hilton corporate headquarters was actually based out of that hotel for a while, wasn't it?
Well, when he came to Chicago, he bought the Stevens, and he also bought the Palmer House. So now he has 2 big iconic hotels in a city, and he spent a lot of time and basically made our hotel his mini headquarters while he was traveling all around the country trying to find other hotels. But if you see an old marketing data, if you look on magazines, the old marketing information, you look way down at the bottom, it has headquarters, Stevens Hotel, and our address, which is really special.
That's wild. Because I remember when I first moved to Chicago about a decade ago, I came over, and you guys used to, and I don't know if you still have it, it was a museum, it was a hotel room amenity museum down off the lobby that had the old basins and the old kind of what the tiles and the fixtures looked like, and it was always kind of so fun as a self-proclaimed hotel nerd to kind of walk through and look at those things. And
we had that in our Grand Tradition space, and 3 years ago we moved it because so many people were interested in it. We moved it out more into the public space. It's right off the lobby. We call it the History Hallway. And there's 5 different stations that talk about the rich history of the hotel and some of the famous people that have passed through it. And we won an award from the Historic Hotels Association on how to present a historical themed hotel in a contemporary way. And we have blue lighting. It's really well done. We actually have one station that has a TV monitor that's rolling with a lot of the filming and TV shows that have been filmed in the hotel.
The Fugitive, Jamie. Dr. Richard Kimball. Yeah, he switched the samples in the ballroom during the event.
That's right.
So with this idea of kind of evolution, I mean, when someone says, what are some of the trends right now that we're seeing in hospitality and tourism, there's several come to my mind. Clearly technology is one of them. And it's not just the use of technology in the environment to enhance the guest experience, but it's also a way that customers are booking and customers are communicating with you. But sustainability for you seems like it's already come up a couple times in this conversation, but the Hilton Chicago really seems like sustainability. There's the social responsibility aspect to it. There's the financial aspect to it. Could you talk just a little bit about what sustainability means to you at the Chicago Hilton and some examples of things that you think that are really having a tremendous impact?
Mm-hmm. Great question. And this really is deep-rooted in me because when I first got there 13 years ago, the question would be is, how can an iconic hotel of its age be really a trendsetter with sustainability? And believe it or not, and here I'm going to pat myself on the back a little bit, in our hotels team, in the last 10 years, through the Illinois Hotel Lodging Association, we've won the Green Earth Award 8 of the last 10 years.
Okay.
And we've won 3 times the Illinois Award. Used to be called the Governor's Award for Sustainability. We've won it 3 times, and no other hotel in the entire state has ever been awarded that.
Are you LEED certified as well?
No, we're not.
No, not.
We are not. We do so many things in that hotel. Mm-hmm. We were one of the first large hotels in the company to go to the bulk amenity product.
Got it.
With shampoo, conditioner, body, soap, and we have in our guest rooms we have the basically the brown paper bag that has all the information on our sustainability efforts, and customers use that brown paper bag. They'll put their plastics, they'll put their newspaper, they'll put things in it, and we have 2 people dedicated to doing nothing but sorting anything that's commingled. We're the largest composter in the state of Illinois. We recycle everything: glass, aluminum, paper, and now with our food, Chef Mario, who's a fantastic chef, is now with programming to how we donate food, leftover food for certain functions and things like that. So sustainability is critically important, not only from the past 10 years, but moving forward. I think people were more conscious to businesses that participate and embrace sustainability.
So I think it goes beyond Chicago too. It's you're sourcing the food sustainably as well. You're dealing with vendors that are also kind of sharing your idea of sustainability. You're growing food at the hotel. I mean,
Correct.
You've got the rooftop garden. So how much effort is there really to train the guest? I mean, do you have to kind of train the guest in this practice as well? I mean, you can train the employees and develop the employees, but how much of it is just kind of re-educating and changing the mindset of the consumer when they come stay at your hotel?
That's a great question. Not only do we do it from a communication standpoint in the guest room with that brown paper bag with talking about sustainability, we put it in our elevators and communicating some of the programs that we do in the hotel. On our menus, we're now printing information on where the food is purchased and some of the sustainability efforts that we do in our culinary. So it's all ongoing dialogue.
And I think it's going to continue to change. I don't think we fully necessarily have seen everything that we can possibly do, and it's always intriguing to kind of go forward. And I think that in an older building such as yours, it must just kind of present a unique challenge. So it's kind of picking the battles that you can fight to really be sustainable, particularly from an HVAC perspective, and because the building is what it is. It's not like this is a brand new construction.
Right. Anything that is coming up for replacing, the number one is what is it that's out there that really speaks to being green and sustainable. Anything that we do, all the lighting that with our recent renovation was all changed. Our water from low flush toilets to faucets to everything is looked at with a lens of sustainability.
So that must also then, this idea of balancing the consumer's expectation with what the trends are, it must also apply then to technology too. I mean, what are some of the things that the Hilton Chicago is really doing to make that experience and embrace technology, but still keeping the original intent of the hotel?
Well, technology is is moving in the direction of the consumer. We have become, addicted to our iPhone. And everything that we do is done there. From making reservations, communicating with hotels. It all started with even our Hilton Honors app, where we were given basically the consumer the ability to both book a room, select a room, and check in on their phone.
You can actually see the floor plan, because I know on the H Honors app, you can see the floor plan, and then you say, like, okay, you want this room, you want this room, and you can actually choose it right there, almost like a seat map on an airplane.
Correct. Yeah. And now it gives the consumer the choice whether they want to bypass the front desk or not. And that's what we're seeing. Anywhere from 18% to 21% of our consumers are now going direct to room, where you can use your phone to check in right there, check in right at the door that you've basically selected that room.
Do you run the risk that it's difficult then to kind of impart high levels of quality? I mean, somebody asked me one day, are we going to replace everybody with robots? And I said, no, because you're always going to need to have that face-to-face human interaction in hospitality, and specifically in hotels. Do you find that you can still keep the same high level of quality customer service when you're because I'm assuming they can also do express checkout on their phone?
Correct.
That you might conceivably not have any face-to-face communication with your guest.
Right.
Between the guest and the team member.
What's interesting is these are all consumer choices. We still have the front desk. We still have our staff. We didn't eliminate any of our staff because of this. It's still if individuals want to check over the desk, we still give them that experience like they've ever had, like they've experienced from before. It's really a consumer choice to want to use all of the technology to go all the way to their guest room without really having to communicate.
So it's more of like an evolution and an adaptation to preference as opposed to a mandating that this is how it's going to be. And that's worked out well.
Correct. And the other item I wanted to bring up was, we have a system called Kipsu, which is a texting with our customers. Our customers are more comfortable with texting. So we will send a text message upon check-in to an individual. How's your stay? Anything we can help you with? Please feel free to text this number back if you need anything.
So is there somebody in PBX actually managing that, or is
correct.
It like AI that's...
No.
There literally is somebody there. That's
correct. Like I mentioned, we didn't reduce anybody at the front office. All this information is there to communicate with our customers. And we'll have text messages from, I would like, maybe a firm pillow, or what time is checkout, to, what's the room service phone number, or any. It's interesting to see some of the dialogue going back and forth.
Do you see that dialogue evolving into more of a concierge-style request of, should I go to the Warhol or should I go see Hamilton? I mean, is it as well? It could be.
It could be. That could be a growing trend.
Interesting, because it seems like you can never tell when those sorts of requests are going to come up, and now it just seems like an added amenity that it's a differentiator between you and someone else when you have that feature. Because what did people do before? Well, they opened up the room compendium, the book in the room. It's one of the first things they did to get a sense of what's at the hotel, and then that kind of evolved to being on the TV, and you can kind of flip through and see the hours and operation of the fitness center and stuff, and now they can just do it right on their phone. I mean, that's...
Right.
Yeah.
No, it's exactly right. And some brands, like the Conrad brand, is really exploring more and more with that.
Interesting.
To being able to even order room service on your own phone.
I love it. I'd like to turn, as we kind of get into the last section of our discussion today, just about you and your leadership style, and some advice that you would have for someone that's listening to this right now about making the decision to either A, leap into hospitality, or B, they know they want to go into hospitality, but maybe making the case for why the lodging side of the industry has been a really rewarding part of your career.
So many students, will ask me about the industry with trends like we're discussing now, and what makes individuals successful in the industry. Or I think the first bit of advice to anyone considering the industry is get your foot in the door. because in that role that you're going to be in you could be in it for 6 months and then move to the next opportunity. It's all up to you. And if you have a growth mindset, meaning you enjoy continuing to learn, maybe not specifically to what you may be doing in a hotel, but what other areas in the hotel you might be interested in, taking the time to learn more and more and more. Some of the best assistant managers and managers that are coming up through the ranks, I almost consider them like athletes, okay? And I'll describe it this way. Back in the, 1990s, football players, you'd hire the biggest guys to be the linemen. They may not be the fastest. But now you see, if you look at the NFL, they're all athletes. They can interchange different players for different roles. And
sure. They can run the 40 faster than I can.
Exactly. Yeah. So, our industry is the same way. If you have the mindset, a growth mindset, and are constantly learning and becoming an athlete of the industry, you're going to move quickly. And before you know it, you're going to be 34 years later, you're the GM of a large hotel, and you wondered still how you got there.
Well, what's interesting about a company like Hilton, and we see the same thing with Marriott and Hyatt, and is that part of it is also getting your foot in the door at a place that is full service, and then making the decision, is full service really not what I'm looking for? And that's what's nice about Hilton, is that you've got all these different brands that if you gravitate more towards the luxury side, if you gravitate more towards the limited service side, and it helps explore. It really gives you the opportunity not just to explore different functions within a single hotel, but also different hotels that are completely different brands.
Correct.
That can provide a very different experience. Working in a 250-room hotel by the airport was very different than working in a 250-room luxury resort. You would say, well, it's the same amount of rooms, but it's a totally different experience. The customer's different. The service standards are different. The day-to-day is just
absolutely
different.
Oh, absolutely. What's one of the excuse me, one of the things that really drove me to want to come to Chicago was the fact that we manage so many properties in Chicago that are all different. From the Hilton Chicago, the Palmer House, the Drake, the Embassy Suites Lakefront, the Conrad, the Waldorf, the Doubletree at Mag Mile, the Hilton Rosemont, Hilton O'Hare. All of these hotels are so different in terms of their group mix, their business travel, their leisure, their offerings. There's so many people. I can go through a list of 100 people that I've worked with that have worked through Chicago in 3 or 4 hotels. They've made their career in one city, where I've worked in others where we may only manage 2 or 3 hotels. Your opportunities are limited. So Chicago is one of those markets like no other city where we manage 9 hotels.
Wow.
So a lot of individuals. I know one individual who's now the general manager at the Embassy Suites Lakefront. And she started at the Palmer House, worked at my hotel, and now she's GM at the Embassy Suites Lakefront.
Sky's the limit.
Absolutely. It's getting your foot in the door, learning everything you can, and opportunities present themselves. And if I could talk about Hilton for a second, I'm not sure, but one of the things I wanted to mention, this year we hit 100 years that the company has been basically around, which was a major milestone. But I think what was the icing on the cake was the fact that we were the #1 hotel in the Fortune 100 best companies to work for in the U.S.
Fantastic.
By Great Places to Work. No other hospitality industry ever received #1.
Yeah.
There was one other hotel company that made it to I think 4 or 6 years ago, but we were #1. And now we're #2, world's best workplace by Great Places to Work. #2 in the world.
That's fantastic. And I think that speaks volumes to when somebody's, whether they're in high school or they're in college already, or even what I kind of call a quarter or midlife career changer, and they look at hospitality and tourism, and sometimes their perceptions of it aren't necessarily accurate. Their perceptions of career trajectory, their perceptions of a realistic job preview of what their day-to-day life might be like. But those sorts of statistics, they tell the real story. And being able to talk to people that have experienced this, that's the real story that we want people to to kind of understand. Working in hospitality was one of the most rewarding things that I've ever done in my career, next to teaching and being an educator. And the day doesn't go by where I don't miss the hospitality and tourism industry. And I think seeing Hilton get those sort of awards and accolades are the exact justification why you go to school for this, or even if you don't go to school for this, you just get your foot in the door. You pick up that job driving the shuttle van to the airport or carrying the luggage, or I've always said, pick up a job working at the front desk of a hotel. You will learn so much. You will learn not just about who you are as an individual, but you'll learn about crisis management. You'll learn how to critically think. You'll learn how to work with different departments. You'll learn how to communicate more effectively. You will meet people that are more diverse than you've ever thought you would ever come in contact with. It is a true microcosm of being able to understand how the world works, working in hospitality and tourism.
Mm-hmm. Oh, no, you're exactly right. Getting your foot in the door, and like you said, front office is one of those critical areas. It's a first stop for any customer experience.
And you'll learn how to type really fast without looking at a keyboard, looking somebody in the eye. So on that note, John Wells, General Manager of the Hilton Chicago, 720 South Michigan, thank you so much for being here on the Hospitality Spirit.
Thank you so much for having me.